Hello and welcome to the National Municipal Stormwater Alliance, NMSA for short, webinar commemorating National Stormwater Day. We're supported in this webinar by the Water Environment Federation and the American Society of Civil Engineers with participation from the US EPA. My name is Scott Taylor and I'm the chair of NMSA and I'm going to be your host today. Next slide, Seth. So why November 16th? It was on this day back in 1990 that the Phase 1 program was established. Yeah, we've been at this for 33 years. I encourage you to visit the Stormwater Day website URL that you see on this slide. We'll maintain an ad to this site throughout the year. It has a media kit available to promote Stormwater Day and some other information about stormwater awareness efforts that are going on around the country. The purpose of Stormwater Day is to raise public awareness about the importance of stormwater and the work that MS4s are doing to improve it. Next slide. Some brief information for you about NMSA. We're a national 501c3 focusing solely on MS4 programs. Specifically, NMSA is helping MS4s to improve program effectiveness while also improving stewardship of their resources. We count 25 state organizations as members, along with some cities and affiliates. The vision for NMSA is clean water for the nation. And next slide. We have a great program for you today. You'll be brought current with a few stormwater related announcements and some good information. First, we're going to hear from Rachel Urban with the Stormwater Permits team from the EPA Office of Water. Rachel's going to be followed by Darren Olson, who is chair of the 2025 ASCE National Committee on America's Infrastructure, the ASCE National Report Card. Darren's a vice president at Christopher B. Burke Engineering. Next, we're going to hear from Steve Dye, the Senior Director of Government Affairs with the Water Environment Federation. And lastly, we'll be hearing from Seth Brown, who's the Executive Director of NMSA. And next slide. So we're going to hold questions to the end, but please, as you think of them, enter your questions in the chat function. So now, let's start right off with Rachel. Rachel.
Thanks, Scott. Get to the right screen, one moment. Okay, here we go. So thank you for inviting me today. I've been very excited to be here and to sort of celebrate with everyone. So I'm gonna flip the normal, normal order of things a little bit today. And I normally end my presentation with more of a thank you slide, but today I'm going to start it. We're really here today to celebrate all of you and the hard work that you do to improve stormwater management in our country. So I want to thank all of you out there listening who are permittees that are taking steps to reduce the stormwater impacts across our country. And I really want to thank also the municipalities, transportation departments, universities, public works staff, and all of those who support these permittees, the consultants and designers, engineers, and many, many more researchers that are out there. So thank you also to the states and to all of the EPA staff that work in the permitting program, because everything that every single one of you do is improving our environment. So I wanted to start out too by just talking a little bit about the permitting universe. So we know that the universe keeps growing and expanding. We have, over 7,500 regulated MS4s across the country. I took a look at EPA's permits for construction and industrial, and we have right now over 6,000 or so construction permittees under our EPA permit. We have about 2,000 or so industrial permittees. So just to take a step back, if you will, this is just a snapshot of a small portion of our country. Think about the amplification of this across all of the state programs and the many thousands of permittees that I have talked about across the country. And each and one of their stormwater programs are reducing pollutants in those discharges, which can make a big impact on the water body. So if you take another step back, imagine all those water bodies that are being improved and are really being protected by the actions that these permittees are taking, both the ones that I've displayed on the screen and the ones that are beyond. And that's the real difference you're all making for our country. So preparing for today's celebration, I'm realizing just how much has changed since phase 1 first came on the scene. So for example, one of the first things I decided to do when I was preparing for this presentation was to look online at annual reports. And I wouldn't have been able to do that back in 1990 to just easily look for information. I would have had to probably request reports and things like that that were printed. And so just the ease with which we're able to obtain information and to really share our knowledge across many different programs and across the many different places in our community is really different than it was back in 1990. So I'm going to go through a couple examples from different annual reports that I was able to see online, and just a couple notes that I wanted to mention of themes is that there really isn't, a standardized reporting metric, and sometimes it was a little bit hard to find quantifiable measures. And I think that that's partly going to be addressed via EPA's e-reporting rule. So I just thought I'd note that since I had noticed it as I was going along. So one of the first examples I'm going to provide is for Portage County, Ohio. And I want everybody to keep in mind that as I go through these examples, it is a single snapshot of a single community. But when you take all of these examples that are likely happening in other communities as well and amplify it, that's really when these actions can add up across the country and really make a big difference. So the first example is related to illicit discharge detection and elimination. And you can see here that they're doing the typical sort of things that you'd expect, looking at their outfalls and doing dry weather screening and flows, source identification and source elimination. But what I noticed was that it was interesting with the follow-up actions that they were taking in order to eliminate those specific sources. So they actually utilized state revolving funds to address eligible issues. So you can see here that they were able to help 8 low to moderate income homeowners to actually repair and or replace their sewage treatment systems at the household level, and those were causing problems in their MS4 system as well. And they also eliminated public health nuisances, about 172, and decided that they were going to go the next step and make sure that they were all mapped so that they could really have those places located and tracked. And I think, this obviously is a snapshot of one place, but if you think about all of the communities, like I said, that are doing similar efforts, I think that it really can add up. Another example from the Baltimore, Maryland area related to trash management. And here they have a trash TMDL, and they do a lot of things related to street sweeping and inlet cleanings. And as part of public education and engagement campaigns, they were mentioning Mr. Trash Wheel, which I don't know if people are familiar with this, but it's a big deal around in the Maryland area. They have Mr. Trash Wheel and his family that go around and collect trash in the rivers and the harbor. And this is really a partnership with the Waterfront Partnership. And so you can see that they're making a difference in collecting a lot of trash. They're elevating the messaging of reducing trash by making it interesting and having googly eyes on things. I feel like you add googly eyes to things, people are paying attention. And it's really elevating it in social media and becoming a big deal. The other thing that I was going to note, another example from San Mateo County, California, is really looking at synergies. So I pulled this excerpt from their annual report, and you can see some themes. The first couple excerpts, they're really collaborating with others, looking for opportunities to work with their county flood and resiliency district, looking to work countywide and on watershed scales instead of just jurisdiction by jurisdiction, so that they can try to have a comprehensive approach, is the way that I was reading into it. They're also looking at opportunities to add stormwater controls for a broad range of new and redevelopment projects. Also coordinating public and private projects so that they're working together in conjunction, where they have opportunities to green street projects in conjunction with other new and redevelopment happening on the private side. And then really looking for those multi-purpose or multi-benefit projects so that they're not just focused only on the stormwater part, but really on all of the comprehensive ways to make a difference in the community. So with all of that, I was gonna share some thoughts on thinking about the future. And if you're anything like me, I've been in this program a while, and probably more than I care to admit at this point. And I know that there's a lot of lessons learned from being in the program for so long, but there's also a lot to be said for people who are newer and they're coming into the field with fresh eyes and new ideas. And so we each hold a piece of the puzzle that kind of shapes what's happening next. And so I just want to share a little bit and shift gears about what sort of things we have that I could see for the future. So I don't know about you all, but I sure feel like as the program continues to mature, the complexity of the issues that we're facing is getting a little harder. And so I want to start by talking just briefly about pollutants. So we used to talk a lot about sediment, right? Like our familiar friends, total suspended solids, total dissolved solids, and the like. And now we still talk about all of those sediments, metals, nutrients. They're still causing problems and impacts, but we're adding newer pollutants as well onto the scene, like PFAS and PAHs and 6-PPD quinone. And so it's, you know, trying to find a way to address all of these pollutants is definitely a complex situation. So with that in mind too, talking about pollutants, we are focused on pollutants and reducing those in stormwater, but we're also taking a step back and thinking more broadly and comprehensively about the sources of the pollutants that are exposed to stormwater that stormwater can pick up. So we're talking more about source control, and people are exploring different ways to change the products and the things that are, like I said, exposed to stormwater, and not just going single-handedly pollutant by pollutant. The other thing to note is that we're talking a lot more about designing the stormwater controls of the future. So we're seeing how storms themselves are changing. Intense single-day rainstorms are rising and increasing, especially in paved areas, leading to urban flooding and having heavy precipitation in certain parts of the country. But on the flip side, we're also talking about drought, particularly in the southwest of the country, and trying to better plan so that we can really address these issues and these concerns that we're faced with now and that we may be continuing to face in the future is definitely on the minds of a lot of folks out there. And speaking of that, with these changing storms, neighborhood streets, infrastructure are stressed, inundated with water. I see a lot of news about flash storms coming out of what seems to be nowhere, and that cause local businesses to become flooded. It's changing how I see patterns of people kind of moving from work or school to home when a big storm is approaching. So it really is changing our behaviors and how we transport information or transport goods and services, and causing, you know, threats to both the quality of life and human health. So another theme that I was thinking about a little bit is really, I'm seeing more communities look for efficiencies to become more effective. So really talking to other departments that are within their city to try to coordinate stormwater management, talking to community members even more so, and working with and forming partnerships with external groups is definitely something on the radar of a lot of people, and I think it'll continue to be in the future as well. Another theme really is looking to simplify messaging and focus. So really tailoring information that we're sharing with folks for the particular topic at hand and for the audience. So thinking about who is in the community, what language they speak, all of these sorts of things, and then avoiding technical jargon in a lot of the public material so that it's as accessible to as many audiences as possible. So one of the examples I wanted to just quickly highlight from EPA is the Stormwater Smart free and customizable communication tools. So we have social media, graphics, infographics, brochures, all sorts of information that's readily available, and you're able to take and customize for your community to share information about stormwater. And you can see one of the examples right here. And, you know, thinking back to 1990 when the phase 1 rule was started, I don't think anybody was envisioning all these social media or infographics back then, but we're certainly moving and shifting as time goes by with what is a good way to share information, not just hard copy things, but all of the electronic ways that we communicate now as well. So another theme that's building upon really the public education and outreach and public involvement portions of the MS4 program is that I'm seeing more and more people have what I'm deeming like an open door approach, where community and staff are forming these new partnerships and building upon existing partnerships that they may have to really leverage sharing of information and really to have a connection with the people who live or work within their community, and trying to get them to be a part of the conversation to shape and to really deem what happens next in terms of their program. And I'm seeing more and more communities seeking out and then incorporating diverse viewpoints to really get at those community objectives that they see and are prioritizing, and really looking for creative solutions to address the issues. The other thing that I'm seeing more and more is people are really trying to better plan for the future. So planning for long-term stormwater management can provide opportunities to use stormwater as a resource to really invest in infrastructure that's resilient and to make community green space more enjoyable and more available to those who live and work in the community. So sort of similar, there's a shift to more resilient solutions like green infrastructure. And people are realizing that as they incorporate green infrastructure into their communities, they're also helping to facilitate local jobs and improve community assets and really strengthen their climate resiliency. So another part is really just integrating stormwater into everyday efforts. So it's not just a standalone project, but it's really a part of another project and making multiple benefits and decreasing the impacts to communities. So for instance, here I have an example of, you know, road reconstruction that's happening, and that people are really trying to think of how to incorporate, like I mentioned before in one of the examples, stormwater controls into that project so that they're also benefiting the neighborhood, reducing the pollutants and the stormwater discharges that are impacting them. So asset management really helps us to have a more comprehensive picture of what the needs are and to be able to understand our needs, describe improvements that are happening, and to really tell the story of what is stormwater management, if you will. And it's asset management also helps to ensure operation and maintenance of stormwater controls is happening regularly so that they can continue to function as designed. And if coupled with pollutant reductions, asset management can really open the door to other opportunities, things like off-site stormwater management, where you can incorporate controls that otherwise may not be able to happen on a site that's being, you know, new or redeveloped, and place it somewhere else so that you can still get the benefit for that water body and that watershed. So the other thing that I was seeing as a theme is that people are really starting to utilize funding and financing and technical assistance, and there seems to be more of it recently as well. So we have the Clean Water State Revolving Fund that's been around. We have a component of that with emerging contaminant funding that's available as well for eligible activities. We have the Sewer Overflow and Stormwater Reuse Municipal Grants Program. And we have, there were so many, I had to put 2 slides. We have a Resiliency Financing Center, and these are just the EPA sort of ones. There's plenty of other ones at other agencies and across the country that also provide funding for stormwater. The mere fact that we have, a municipal ombudsman who's focused on stormwater and other municipal issues is really a change since 1990 as well. If you're interested in learning about any of these materials, the link is there, and I think it's in the handout that is in the, I don't know what to call it, that section of the platform over there. And then there's water technical assistance as well up in the right-hand corner. And that really can help communities to look at the challenges that they're facing and help figure out next steps to really address those better. So I wanted to also note that we have the Clean Watersheds Needs Survey to identify stormwater funding gaps. And EPA finished collecting data for this 2022 Clean Watersheds Needs Survey, and we're in the process of taking a close look at those. And I just wanted to note that participation was up since the last time the survey was done, primarily because of outreach to the stormwater sector. And you all have done a tremendous job really making sure that you're quantifying these needs and that we're able to share them adequately with each other so that we can really get a better understanding of where the gaps are. And I think the increase in the stormwater needs themselves seems to be higher as well, and that is because of the the participation and the real efforts that everyone has done to work together to make sure that those needs are quantified. So we're currently working diligently to complete the report to Congress on these results, and so we'll share them as soon as we're able to. And we're hoping to get those done shortly, in short term. So with that, I want to thank everybody for inviting me, and I think I will turn this over to Darren.
Yeah, and while Darren's getting ready here, I just had a couple of quick things I wanted to announce. We had over 700 people registered for this webinar, and right now I'm seeing 467 in attendance, so that is awesome. And as Rachel said, the PDF of all the slides is available in the handout section of GoToWebinar, so hopefully you can slog around and find that and download the slides. And then just quickly, also the questions, use the question function of GoToWebinar rather than the chat function to enter your questions. And now I'm going to turn it over to Darren. Darren.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. And Rachel, that was a great presentation. My name is Darren Olson. I am the chair of the American Society of Civil Engineers Committee on America's Infrastructure. Many of you may know us as the people that put out the report card. But in my day job, I am a practicing water resources engineer. So this is a great day for me. I'm glad we're celebrating this. And I really want to thank everyone for allowing me to be a part of this, this panel discussion. So what I'm going to talk about today is starting with the ASCE's report card, but really focus on the stormwater component of that and how from 2017 until now, that stormwater became a standalone chapter in ASCE's report card. It was really a 6-year process mobilizing a lot of the stormwater engineers that are part of ASCE. And looking forward to what's going to happen for our next report card in 2025. So those that may not be familiar with our report card, the American Society of Civil Engineers puts out a report card on America's infrastructure every 4 years. We see here the cover from the 2021 report card. We generally rate 17 categories of infrastructure. And as I said, stormwater in 2021 became an official chapter in the report card. Really, again, due to a lot of industry partners like we have on the webinar today coming forward with a lot of data that allowed us to do that. And then those that, I don't know if you've seen the State of the Union or other platforms where our elected officials talk about the state of our country's infrastructure. They quote the ASCE report card all the time. I can remember back when President Obama talked about it in his State of the Union. And that's really what our report card is. It's an advocacy tool that allows engineers to talk to our elected officials and talk to the public about the state of our infrastructure. It answers really the why. Why do I need, as an elected official, why do I need to invest in my community's storm sewer system? Why, as a member of the public, do I have to maybe put in a backflow preventer? So really taking these a lot of complex data and boiling it down to something that's digestible for the average person. And data is really the key to the report card. They're completely data driven. We mine data from all sorts of government agencies. WEF, of course, provided us a tremendous amount of data to start the stormwater chapter last time. But these report cards, they're not white papers, asset management tools, or technical papers. They're really advocacy tools for us to approach our elected officials and the public and give them people with very little background on infrastructure to be able to allow them to understand what our country's infrastructure condition is and hopefully how we can improve it. So as I mentioned, we had 17 categories of infrastructure in our last report card. Everything from your typical engineering, the bridges and roads and dams, to now, as we see here, stormwater was added in 2021. Broadband, we had a breakout component for broadband, but that was one that was not added in 2021. But stormwater was, and it is something that we will be including in our 2025 report card as well. So how do we develop the grades? And it's a very methodical process. We look at really 8 criteria. For each one of these infrastructure categories, including stormwater, we look at 8 different criteria. Capacity. So for a stormwater, what's the capacity of our nation's stormwater infrastructure? What is the condition of that stormwater infrastructure? Rachel talked a lot about funding. What is our current funding level for our stormwater infrastructure? And then what is the future need of our stormwater infrastructure, whether it's funding need or looking at additional investment in capital to handle climate change. What are the operation and maintenance practices and routines for stormwater infrastructure? How does stormwater infrastructure affect public safety? What's the resilience of our stormwater infrastructure, and how is innovation affecting how we go about designing and implementing our stormwater infrastructure? So the grades then are something that we present for each one of the infrastructure categories. And this is a really important component of the report card because it takes a lot of complex data and we're able to, through those criteria, to boil it down to a grade. And this is something that we all have at one point gotten a report card in our life. Hopefully most of us are on the A to B side, and our children bring home report cards all the time. And so this is something that everyone can understand and is very effective in conveying the message of what our infrastructure condition is. And so we know if it's a B, it's adequate, it's good for now. If it's a D, it's at risk and needs further investment. So this is really the key. And then all of the grades for each category of infrastructure are averaged out to get the total grade for the nation's infrastructure. So these are the grades from the 2021 report card. Again, this is the latest report card. The overall national grade was a C-, and we can see the 17 different categories of infrastructure. Stormwater, highlighted here, was rated as a D. And in the next few slides, I'm going to get into how we came up with that a D grade for stormwater. But you can see that some of the categories that have been on the report card for many, many years. Aviation went up, drinking water went up. So some of these, depending on how they do from one report card to the next, you will see them go up and go down, and similar for stormwater, depending on how it is graded during this next cycle. We will see how the grade shakes out for the next report card. So getting into stormwater in a little bit more detail. So we look at the 8 different criteria. We're looking at capacity. We're all familiar with millions of miles of storm sewers and detention basins and drains across the United States. One thing that we noted in the report card, the capacity in reality is decreasing because what we're seeing is higher rainfall rates and greater urbanization throughout the country. And so what happens is that you get a storm sewer that maybe was 20 or 30 years ago designed for a 10-year storm event. Now, because of these different factors, maybe it only has capacity for a 5-year storm event or a 2-year storm event. So we're seeing not only is our stormwater infrastructure aging, but the capacity of it is also decreasing as it's sitting in place. From a condition perspective, Rachel talked about asset management. Nationwide, it's largely unknown the condition of our nation's stormwater infrastructure. And more importantly, the ownership of that infrastructure can be unknown as well. So we look at, trying to rate the condition of our infrastructure for stormwater, and we can, maybe look at rivers and streams that our stormwater infrastructure drains to and look at how those streams are doing. And from 2010 to 2018, we saw the miles of impaired rivers and streams increasing, which leads us to maybe have concerns about the condition of our stormwater infrastructure. Funding, of course, we're all aware there is a very large funding gap for stormwater infrastructure. MS4s from WEF's surveys, Stormwater Needs Survey, it's roughly $8 billion for MS4s just to keep up with current regulations. What we have seen, though, on the funding side is that communities are starting to implement, and a larger percentage of communities are starting to implement stormwater utilities or fees to help them bridge that funding gap. We also see a very large future need in stormwater. An economic analysis by ASCE for the overall water sector, so this includes drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater, showed over 10 years a $434 billion investment gap for this water infrastructure that stormwater is a part of. So definitely a huge, going forward, a very large investment gap for stormwater infrastructure. And part of that too is we need to think about what is that future going to hold, and we're seeing, as Rachel indicated, increased rainfall from climate change. Here in Chicago, where I'm at, we're predicted to have 20 to 30% wetter springs, and so our stormwater infrastructure is going to have to perform and be designed for that in the future. Public safety is another area certainly of concern for stormwater. From 2004 to 2014, urban flooding cost communities $9 billion in direct damages and resulted in 71 deaths. And urban flooding is such a, here in Chicago and throughout the country, is such a concerning phenomenon. Much of these areas aren't mapped on FEMA maps. And ultimately, they seem to be disproportionately impacting economically disadvantaged areas, which makes it that much more challenging to have local funding try to solve this problem if that flooding is impacting these economically disadvantaged areas. And finally, with resilience, we can look at and this is one from Illinois, you can look at almost nationwide, what are extreme storm events looking like, both as we look in the past and as we look in the future. And that path is generally an upward trend. And so our stormwater infrastructure is going to have to be able to withstand climate change and other phenomena. It's going to have to be much more resilient than what we've previously designed our stormwater infrastructure for. So all those, when we brought those together, that is how we developed a grade of D for the nation's stormwater. So now I'll take a step back and talk about how we got to the point of wanting to get a grade in stormwater, and really that developed organically, not even at the national level, but really with some of the ASCE state sections. These sections throughout the United States, they put out their own report cards to talk about infrastructure in their states. And there began to be a movement, as you see here back in 2017, for states to want to talk about their stormwater infrastructure. And that is really one of the key factors that led to nationally the American Society of Civil Engineers wanting to include stormwater as a chapter in our report card. Going forward, you're looking at 2025, that'll be our next report card. We put them out every 4 years. We're right now in the data gathering and data collection component of that. As you see, as we work our way through the chart here, eventually in March of 2025, myself and the 30 to 40 members of the Committee on America's Infrastructure will then release our report card. And what we need to do that is data. And so part of what I'd like to ask today for those that are attending is to help us with the data component of this. And I'd like to give a shout out to WEF. Their MS4 Needs Assessment Survey back in 2019 was really one of the key components that allowed us to move forward with our stormwater chapter. But I'd like to ask anyone else that has data that could help us and incorporate into the stormwater chapter would absolutely be appreciated. And we've got contact information here at the end of the presentation for you to provide that too. We also, once we publish the report card, that's not the end of it. We have a lot of different ways to get out the data from the report card and certainly the grades. We have YouTube videos. We had a 2021 Solutions Summit. We have interactive websites. So those that may want to be a part of this or would have suggestions as to how we in 2025 can assist with the release of the report card, we'd certainly love to hear from you as well. In addition, ASCE does a lot of its own advocacy on stormwater. In June, in this past June, ASCE released Pathways to Resilient Communities, really an online clearinghouse of tools and resources for a wide range of audiences to look at resilience and how that can be implemented in their community. We do a lot of speaking engagements. Up on the upper right, the individual at the left is our Executive Director, Tom Smith, who spoke at a a recent water industry presentation at the Reservoir Center. And so we're always looking for opportunities to do that. And finally, we have ASCE 7, which is really the society's most widely used professional standard, and really a critical tool in the civil engineers' commitment to the protection of the health, safety, and welfare of the public. This year, with the release of the flood supplement to ASCE 7 standards, we've made that available online for free public access. And with that, I would like to provide some contact information from the staff at ASCE. If you have information you want to provide regarding our report card, policy, future report card assistance, we have Gordon, and then for advocacy, we have Lizzie. And finally, I would like to thank the organizers for including me in the panel, and I'd like to congratulate all of the attendees on our celebration of National Stormwater Day. So with that, I will turn it over to Steve.
Great, thank you, Darren. Appreciate it. I echo Darren's remarks earlier. I'm going to try to screen share my slides here with you all. Echo Darren's remarks earlier about thanking everybody for their amazing work and as water professionals to help communities with their stormwater needs, making them safe and healthy places to live and protecting the environment. That's part of WEF's core mission, is to make everybody appreciate the value of water and make our environment safe. So it's great to be part of this conversation, and thanks to NMSA for including me in this and our continued partnership there. I'm going to run through a few slides here to kind of give an overview of some of the things that WEF has been involved with over the years, but also to kind of inspire you all, hopefully, to become more part of the advocacy effort that Darren was outlining there, and the opportunities that we have to try to shape the future for how we manage stormwater in our nation going forward. So just briefly, a couple of things that we've had a hand in the last couple of years that I'm going to point to your direction in case you haven't seen them and you're interested in utilizing these resources. They're available to WEF members and non-members. They're free on Access Water, which is WEF's kind of library of resources. Our first iteration of rainfall to results was back in 2015. It's just been updated and it's out and available now. And a special shout out to all the co-authors of the different chapters, including Scott Taylor for his help on chapter on resilience there. There is a new chapter in the report on resilience. It's really the report as a whole. Rainfall to results is it's kind of a big picture survey of where our nation is with how to manage stormwater and what are some of the best management practices that are being employed, and how we could, as a nation, do more to manage stormwater in our communities. And so it's a useful resource, and you're welcome to review it, as I said, through Access Water. Also, as Darren was referencing, we have done for several years now the MS4 needs survey, collecting data through a survey process from MS4 communities across the country. It's really been a very successful effort, and it's good to see that it's being utilized in different ways, including the ASCE report card. And we just completed the latest version, and it's out now. That latest version was based on 2022 data. It was released in 2023. So we're going to begin the next data collection in 2024 for a 2025 release. So if you didn't participate in the survey in the last couple rounds, and you would like to help us collect better data on how communities and what their needs are around stormwater and how they're managing stormwater, please participate in a future round of the data collection, the survey that will go on in 2024. Again, this report is free. It's available at accesswater.org, and please take a look if you have an interest. You know, Darren mentioned some of the funding needs there. He said, you know, $8 billion. And that was, as was mentioned, it was based upon the 2020 data. We still see strong financial or funding needs there for stormwater infrastructure investments in communities. So you know, that helps with our arguments with Capitol Hill about why there needs to be robust federal funding to help communities with their infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure investments. You know, a couple other items that I'd like to point out. The MS4 awards that WEF has been running now since 2015 as well, and it was established in partnership with the US EPA. It's a way of phase 1, phase 2 communities to be recognized for their outstanding performance in stormwater management. So if you are in a community or you work with a community and they're doing good things with their phase 1 or phase 2 permit, you know, take a look at the MS4 awards program. We do it every year at WEFTech. It's part of the awards ceremony and Tuesday afternoon at WEFTech. The awardees receive you know, recognition for their outstanding work, and we'll sometime in you know, late winter, early spring, we'll open up the application process. Another program we helped stand up a number of years back was the National Green Infrastructure Job Program, the NGICP, we call it, certification program. It's a way for folks to get trained to be green infrastructure personnel and operators and to maintain green infrastructure. We spun it off to an organization called EnviroCert, who is now running that program, but individuals get certified to be green infrastructure professionals. Another program that we helped establish, and Seth's going to get into it later because NMSA is now carrying it forward, is the STEP program, the Stormwater Testing and Evaluation for Products and Practices program. And I hope there's some time for Seth to talk a little bit about that program. It's a great one that NMSA is running. I'd like to spend the remainder kind of our time here talking a little bit about policy. There's been a lot of things happening over the last decade or so on stormwater policy, on Capitol Hill in particular. There really had been this lack of awareness, I think, on Capitol Hill about what is going on in communities out there. Although the MS4 program got stood up in 1990, the limited amount of money and the limited amount of support helping communities to deal with their stormwater needs was a deficit for what was going on in communities across the country. So WEF and NMSA have been partnering on kind of raising awareness to Congress about how they can be more helpful to communities in how they're dealing with the stormwater. We've had a recommendations document that we've been putting together for a number of years now that has a different sets of recommendations, and we've been very successful with it. We've can show a lot of successes, but I think one thing that we could do differently in the future, based upon Rachel's recommendation earlier about googly eyes, is maybe to get Congress's attention. We'll put a googly eyes on our recommendations document, and that'll help Congress pay attention a little bit more. Even all jokes aside, though. So no, we were successful in getting a report out of the EPA's Environmental Financing Advisory Board on reviewing what the funding gaps were for stormwater and some recommendations to Congress. Another thing that we always realized was there was a limited amount of data that Congress had about stormwater infrastructure needs, and the Clean Watershed Needs Survey that Rachel was talking about earlier is their primary source of information. So and that the needs survey hadn't been funded in quite a while, and so WEF and NMSA really advocated hard for full funding for that needs survey, the next round of the needs survey, which, as Rachel said, is being wrapped up now, but also with the caveat that they included when they provide the funding an emphasis that an effort needs to be really made to get more data into that report on stormwater, and EPA and the states that collect that data have done a really good job of going out and collecting more info about stormwater, as Rachel mentioned on her remarks earlier. Yeah, and then another thing that we're excited to see from the report was that we realized that there's a lot of problems with trash and stormwater. Sorry, trash in stormwater. They did a Save Our Seas Act 2.0 a few years back, and they made stormwater projects eligible to receive the trash-free waters grants. I don't know if that's being utilized or pursued as much as it should. I would say if you're in a community that has a lot of trash in your stormwaters, keep an eye out for that trash-free waters grant to get some money to do some projects like Rachel was showing the trash monster in the Baltimore Inner Harbor that sucks up stuff. Those sorts of things are, as well as just old, traditional techniques like screens and things like that can be funded through this. Another thing that we had in our recommendations was more robust data for communities on how to plan better. And the NOAA Atlas 14 program is a precipitation modeling program that NOAA does, and the Atlas programs are, and we were advocating for next round of funding and more funding for the Atlas 14. Now they're on to Atlas 15, I believe, but that's that allows for better data to be provided through NOAA for communities for doing planning and how to design for what will be the more common 100 years event or 500-year event that we're seeing due to climate change. And so that's a good data source for that sort of stuff. And then finally, and I'm going to have another slide. The next slide is a little bit more on the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. That has been one of the, I think, really great successes that we've had in trying to, increase awareness for stormwater funding needs. The Clean Water SRF program is the primary tool. It does allow for funding for stormwater. There is a set aside for the Green Project Reserve Fund, but they also did allow for stormwater management to have greater amount of additional subsidization for communities that are getting a Clean Water SRF grant for the stormwater project. Additional subsidization is things like principal forgiveness and converting, loans into grants and things like that, or 0% loans, things like that. Also, there were a whole bunch of new grant programs that were established in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. These centers of excellence that are going to be based at either universities or nonprofit entities that will provide help to communities on planning and designing and identifying the right kinds of technologies, such as through the STEP program, that would help for stormwater management. There's also a new stormwater planning and design grant, implementation grant, that, as was mentioned, the sewer overflow and stormwater reuse municipal grants that Rachel mentioned earlier, that got reauthorized and the money got bumped up for it. And that can go for stormwater projects, resilience grants, circuit riders, that will help for helping communities designing stormwater projects, reuse projects, alternative source water projects, and the WIFIA program. All are stormwater focused. They have stormwater elements to them. And then the US DOT, the Healthy Streets program, will also allow for porous pavement, high albedo, kinds of pavements that will help with better stormwater management. And then for 2023, we're going to start our refreshing of the document for 2024, but some of the highlights from the 2023 report or recommendations was full funding for the stormwater program, the stormwater grants that were a part of IIJA, then also support for better infrastructure, stormwater infrastructure funding tools, maybe exploring the idea of standing up a new kind of independent loan program similar to the SRF, but more for stormwater projects or construction grants kind of program that are for stormwater projects, because a lot of communities aren't structured to be able to take out a loan because they don't have a stormwater utility that they could take a loan through, but maybe you could help give them a grant to establish that. So some of those, innovative approaches, new approaches for managing stormwater infrastructure funding. And then federal response to helping better federal response to helping localize stormwater events, money for H&H models in communities. Hang on a second. Maybe some new grant dollars that through the FEMA or other federal agencies, as well as we don't see a lot of coordination between federal agencies. So one of our requests was that there'd be better coordination between federal agencies that have an interest in how to manage stormwater, such as EPA, DOT, Department of Energy, Department of Interior, USDA, all these different agencies that many others that have an interest in kind of how water is managed in our country. And then also support for source control of pollutants that are entering stormwater, as was mentioned by Rachel, things like PFAS and microplastics and 6-PPDQ. Those things are increasingly a concern, and how can we better manage those things entering our stormwater and not getting into our watersheds. So we had a number of recommendations in the report for that. We'll be, as I said, updating it soon with some additional things for 2024. On the budget side of things, I know you all have been hearing a lot about what's happening in Congress. There is authorized levels of funding that I kind of detailed earlier there in what was in the IIJA. We really want to see full funding for all those projects, all those grant programs, in the 2024 budget. There's a lot happening up on Capitol Hill around the 2024 budget. It may be hard for us to get all of these wins. I'm almost certain we won't get them all, but that's what we're still pushing for them. And if you're a WEF member, or even if you're not a WEF member, we have our call to action up on our WEF Water Advocates program, and you're welcome to go to that and send a letter through that to your member of Congress asking for funding for FY24 for water infrastructure funding. But we're pushing hard for as much money as possible in the final FY24 budget. A couple of the things that you see on the screen here are included either in the House or the Senate versions of the bills. Maybe not at the levels that they're authorized, but we're eager to see them, some of them being put in the final package whenever that gets done. Now it looks like we're talking January or February after this continuing resolution is getting passed. So what do we have planned for the near future? We are going to do our National Stormwater Policy Forum again. It's a joint event that WEF and NMSA have been doing for quite a few years now. We're going to do it on April 8th, 2024 in Washington, D.C. Last year, we were joined as partners with the American League of Cities and the National Association of Counties. They were generous enough to give us their space by Union Station last year. We're hopeful we can make that work again in 2024, but I think we'll have more details coming together soon. If you're interested in coming and joining us and learning about policy matters in Washington beyond what I was just explaining, but lots of other important policy areas in stormwater. We usually put together a good program that has a lot of experts coming in from around DC and Capitol Hill and federal agencies to give updates on what's happening and be prepared for what the future holds in stormwater policy. So join us, save the date and join us if you can in April 2024. A few other brief things here. As I mentioned, the National Stormwater Policy Forum, also the WEF Collection Systems and Stormwater Conference is going to be in Hartford, Connecticut also in April, that same week, April 9th through 12th, and then WEF Tech in October 2024 hope to see you all there in New Orleans. So with that, I think I am done, Seth, and I will hand it over to Seth Brown.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for that Marco Rubio moment when you took your glass of water or drink of water, which is important because we need water, right, Steve? So I appreciate that. But really, it's and a lot that Steve talked about is being on the Hill and all that's going on. I hope people who aren't as close to this stuff as we are here in the DC area and working on Capitol Hill, see that there's a lot going on, a lot more than there used to be. I assume that you would agree with that, Steve.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So it's great that we're seeing that, and on that same point, this was something that the National Stormwater Day is something that we said, oh, this is an interesting thing. Let's see what happens. We had over 700 people register. We've got 470 that have shown up and attended. So it's clearly this is an area of rising interest, and we really appreciate everyone taking time out of our day. So we're going to wrap up around the quarter past the hour. So I just want to share a little bit of what we've been doing with NMSA to contribute, just like EPA has, just like ASCE has, and of course WEF. We just heard about that. So I just want to share on two specific areas and initiatives that we're focusing on. Well, the first is the National MS4 online resource. This is something that was developed actually a couple of years ago, and we just frankly didn't promote it as much as we should have, and it's been something that's been useful, but we want to kind of revive that. So this is you can see the URL for this. This is its own web portal that's associated with our website, but it's separate from it, and it's truly it's its own resource. We got a lot of support from EPA to set this up. So another thing I wanted to highlight here, and you heard from Rachel too, EPA I think is given a lot of short shrift, and there's some negativity around the agency. But in reality, they provide a lot of support, and they want to help communities do right so that we can clean water. That's what we're all trying to do here, and especially in the Office of Water Areas. So this was made possible by EPA for two goals. Basically, we want to provide basic information on MS4s for those who don't know that much about it, may be new. We're having a lot of turnover in workforce. And those are also decision makers who may not know that much about it. This is a portal for them to learn basics. And we also have we're building a library of online documents, reports, and other things like that. That if you want to share them, and this is the other thing too, it's interactive. So we have a library already set up, but this is a portal for you. If you have a report that you generated, or however it works, that you either generated yourself or your community generated, you can upload it. We'll talk about that real quickly. I did want to mention that this is not associated with any regulatory permitting requirements. This is just informational only. These are the topic areas. There's 6 topic areas. You can see they're in that Explore the Guide document there. You can click on any one of those and get more information. So these are the topics that are of greatest interest, that is what we have seen in a lot of the engagement outreach that we did. So I won't go through all of them, but these should not be new and surprising to folks. So if you click on any one of those, you actually dig into even more and more information. So under funding, for instance, there's a lot of information on funding. There's all these subsets of information. So if you click on one of those, it brings you to another page that has some information, and there's even more detailed. So this is in this context, it's existing stormwater related costs. You can click on that sub-bullet, and you can get a bunch of information, and this is just a subset of that, as well as some case studies. So there's a lot of just basic information out there on a bunch of topics. There's more out there than people might realize. So as I mentioned, there's a whole document library page. We call it resources. So you can access that by clicking on the resources link there. You can also provide feedback and submitting a resource. I'll talk about that in a slide or two. But just accessing the resource, the library, you just go there. It's just like any other portal. You go in there, you put in your category, so you can filter it out based upon topics, funding, or program O&M, things like that. And it comes up with whatever is whatever meets those categories in our library. So it filters out the results. Click on that, and you're good to go. So these are all free online resources, or they're uploaded PDFs, things like that. we are looking for feedback. So this is just a feedback page. We're wondering, hey, how does this work? Is it working well for you? Is it not working well for you? If it is, then great. Let us know. If it's not, tell us how we can improve it. And you can select the category specifically. Hey, in the operations section, you have this listed. That's actually wrong, or you need some more information in this area. So we're looking for, to improve this. We're in 1.0 mode right now, so we're looking to improve it. And as I mentioned before, if you have an existing research, maybe you're a researcher, maybe you're a community, maybe you're a consultant working for somebody who has given you permission to share resource, you can go there, put in your information, upload it, and whether it's a web link, then you should be able to upload a file as well. Click a category and it uploads. I'll include the caveat that we have the deference to be able to review this to make sure that it's not commercialized, because this is not a commercial platform. It's just informational. So we will make that determination whether it's something that should be shared with the world. We want to have more peer-to-peer exchange, information exchange, and this should help to facilitate that. So in conclusion, this resource is available right now. You can go there right now, click on it, start using it. We are looking for feedback both on user experience as well as content. Is it working for you as a user? Are we missing content? Do we have content wrong? And please help us grow our resource library, and then keep checking in, because this is growing and evolving all the time. So that's our online resource. The second initiative I wanted to mention that we've been focusing on, this is probably the most significant for us, is the STEP program. And Steve talked about this a little bit. So I want to build upon that. And it really addresses this question about what is, how well do stormwater products and practices work? How well does our infrastructure work? And this ties in also with the discussion from Darren about what's the state of our infrastructure. And it really comes down to the fact that there's no national organization that can help provide this consistent, technical, credible verification of performance, not only of proprietary products, but of public domain systems. You would never build a bridge and not know if it's going to work, right? Why would we do the same thing? Why would we invest millions and billions of dollars into an infrastructure and not have a lot of confidence that it's going to perform the way that we need it to? This is public dollars. This has to work. We need to have more confidence, frankly, than we've had in the past. So this is what STEP is about. It's the stormwater testing and evaluation for products and practices. And the goal is very simple: to develop this, to meet this missing niche, this missing need at the national level. There are state programs that are great, and we're leveraging those and working with those to develop this multi-state and hopefully national at some point program, and maybe international. I was just on a call with a group from New Zealand that's looking at trying to get involved with this type of approach. Canada as well, so North American at least. But we're trying to increase overall performance, as I mentioned before, because we need to have confidence in that, so that ratepayers, taxpayers, others will invest in our infrastructure, because they'll have better confidence that it actually performs. At the end of the day, if that performs, if we get more investment, we should get improved water quality outcomes. That's really what we're all here for, and what we're all about, we've spent our careers focusing on. This work is being done within NMSA under the STEP Center of Excellence, the Center of Excellence for Stormwater Testing and Evaluation. NMSA does not have committees like other organizations have. We have centers of excellence. These are areas that have focus areas, whether it's, we got one on public-private partnerships, and we've got another one here on testing and evaluation. I'm the chair, I'm the director of that. The chair is Jay Holtz. This is a rotating position, and this is where really the program resides. There's a lot to be said about this. I'll just say the principles is that we're just trying to get technologies delivered out to and implemented as quickly as we can. We've got these state programs that are great, so we're not recreating the wheel. We're not certifying products and practices. We're just verifying the performance and letting communities and states make the determination whether they should be certified for use. We're working with states and communities. This is launched right now. We're starting to take applications in the very near future, focused on trash capture. That's our first point of interest, and we heard about that with the trash wheel and whatnot. But we're going to be expanding greatly from that point over the next couple of years. So we all have continual improvement. So I did want to mention that we are going to have both public domain. We're starting proprietary MTB products, but we're going to be expanding to all infrastructure, getting more researchers involved and whatnot as well. So we've got lab and field testing options too. So it's a flexible program. that's what it's about. It is moving forward. There's a lot to be said, but we don't have time to cover it here. You can get more information at our website at nationalstormwateralliance.org/step with 2 P's. There's other information that's available here. All the slides that we're showing today are in PDF format in the handout section of your GoToWebinar portal there. If you can't find that, let me know. You can email me. The contact information is provided in the email that's been sent out. And I think that's about all I had. So Scott and others, you guys want to turn your cameras back on, and we can have some questions to address. I know I've seen you got some to look at, I think, Scott.
Yeah, thanks, Seth. The first one is for Rachel. I know you talked about it's coming out soon. This Clean Watershed Needs Survey specifically is what I'm talking about. So is that going to be available, do you think, well, let me ask my question directly. I'm trying to think, is there a way that we can use the data from the Clean Watershed Needs Survey to help feed into the 2025 ASCE infrastructure report card? Do you think the schedules are going to line up enough to do that, or no?
So I'm hopeful that with the information that I was told, I don't work on that directly, but it does sound like they're hopeful for sometime next year that it would be coming out, but it's not like a promised thing. Obviously,
Right.
It takes time and there's a lot behind the scenes that happens, but hopefully so.
Okay, no, that'd be good. I mean, I think that would be a real boost to the report card. And the next question was for Darren. If you could just quickly, Darren, clarify the relationship between the state report cards and the national one. You know, I always thought it was kind of this deal where all the state ones rolled up to the national report card, but that's definitely not the case, correct?
That's correct. The national report card is done by ASCE Nationals Committee on America's Infrastructure, looking at national data. Each state can do its own report card, and that's where we focused on just that state's data. So you are correct. All the state ones don't roll up to the national one. They're done somewhat separately, but using the exact same methodology.
So does the national committee look at the state report cards at all, or pretty much not? They just stand alone and are a separate resource?
Oh, absolutely. We review all of them. Yes. So there's a lot of coordination between the national and state level. But again, they're just not, the equation isn't, add up all 50 state ones and get to the national one. So
Okay.
They're done separately.
Thanks. And then Steve, I just, you talked about this a little bit, but I was just interested to get a little more information. I mean, I keep hearing about, it sounds to me like we're going to be cutting budgets and cutting the amount of money available coming from the federal government. I mean, are you really somewhat bullish on some of these appropriations actually happening for stormwater? Or, I mean, because to me, it just looks like it's going to be kind of a fiscal desert at the federal level, given the way, the House is operating. And I mean, if that's true, is there anything besides, I guess, just writing our congressman that we should or could be doing to try to help some of this along?
That's a good question, Scott. Well, so the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act was broken into 2 parts. One part was kind of what you would call guaranteed funding. That's predominantly going through the Clean Water SRF or the Drinking Water SRF programs. That will be unaffected. So there'll still be a sizable amount of money going to states through the SRF programs. But you're right in that there's a big challenge on the appropriations front on what may be included in the FY24 budget and future years due to our fiscal state and the fights that are going on Capitol Hill and how much we should be putting into things. It really, politics are funny because sometimes, they'll support things you wouldn't expect it to be supported even when they're in a cutting phase. So being a vocal sector and letting folks know, letting members of Congress know that that there's important needs out there just helps at least maintain some levels of funding, maybe reduce the amount that it'll be cut, even if it's gonna, everything else is getting cut around it. So it's important that we still kind of be the squeaky wheel, if you want to say, and that can be done through writing letters or sending emails. I guess that's the same thing nowadays. You know, phone calls, social media, posting things on members' Facebook or LinkedIn pages, as well as you know, going to see them at town hall meetings if they're going to be there, and pressing them on the need for increased funding for water infrastructure, or at least maintaining funding for stormwater infrastructure. And then also what I mentioned before, that the National Water Policy fly-in in April, coming to town and going to do meetings on Capitol Hill is always a good way to kind of be present and let them know that it's important that funding is provided, even if it, you know, we may not get new things funded, but maybe the things that are currently being funded will get level funded for in 2024 or 2025 when they start that process in a couple months.
Okay, thanks much. Before we close, Seth, do you want to tell people in a shameless plug how they can join NMSA?
Yeah, well, a couple things. First of all, there were some questions about whether this is being recorded. It has been recorded. I think we put that up front, but folks joined late, and just want to confirm that this is available and will be available. We're going to post this on our YouTube site, and we'll send that link out to everybody once that's posted in the next couple of days or early next week, something like that. Also, again, the slides are available in PDF format too. So there's also a question about, hey, you know, we've been trying to reach NMSA, and we're small, so I apologize that we haven't followed up, but we will be. And if anyone has any interest in joining as a member, whether it's a company as an affiliate member, whether it's a community as an MS4 or a state organization, we cover half the country now, but we still have a lot that we have to follow up on. So, or hear from. Our goal is to have an organization in every state, and we're trying to get more and more MS4s to join on board. You get a lot of great benefits from that. So please contact me. The information will be available in an email that's sent out to you when this is all done. So that's what I got, Scott.
Thanks much. All right, well, in closing, for stormwater programs to be successful, we got to have public support. The stormwater sector, I think, has done a kind of a traditionally poor job at public relations and public education. And one of NMSA's primary objectives is to raise the profile of stormwater. Stormwater Day is another way that we're working towards this objective, and we look forward to having an even bigger program next year. So thanks to our panelists for attending, and thank you to you for attending, and good day.
Thanks, everybody.